So I am a futurist, and it's my job to know about the latest new and coming technologies and their potential impact on the future of business, as well as the future of our lives. And one of the things I'm sort of known for talking a lot about is not just the opportunities and the potential of these technologies, but also the potential risks. So with every good comes, maybe a negative. And the thing is that it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and educate others about these now so we can start to implement the choices that help lead us to a better tomorrow. It was great to hear what David had to say. I absolutely agree. And I'm going to speak a bit more about these areas of risk. So why don't we talk about risk enough? One thing is it's quite scary. So people might have this idea that, the Terminator is going to happen, or maybe you've watched a couple episodes of Black Mirror, and it is quite scary. I'm absolutely on the same page with you. The other thing is that it can also feel quite overwhelming. We're just one person. What impact do I have? What influence do I have? Well, I want to share with you some of the ways that you can impact this and influence it and make sure that these technologies that we're talking about work for us and we don't work for those technologies. I'm going to start with deep learning and AI, and then I'm going to go in and talk a bit about XR and the metaverse. So one thing we can know for sure is that AI is not going to go anywhere. Facebook, Google, China, the US are not going to wake up tomorrow and say, maybe AI is a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't pursue it. This is happening, and this is something that we need to embrace and get used to. Some futurists project that within 8 years, AI is going to exceed human intelligence. So think about that. Imagine a world where we are not the smartest beings in it, and the smartest beings are emulating us. So we have a real responsibility in our training of AI to make sure that we are providing ethics and providing our values that we see for a greater humanity, because these are the things that are going to train these technologies. We know that artificial intelligence can do a lot of amazing things. So this is one of my favorite examples, the clinical knowledge base. So this is an international database where they can collect information, research on cancer patients, and treatments. So this means that a doctor in the US can enter in the profile of their patient and maybe find that over in Singapore, there was a doctor who used this certain treatment and the cancer was cured. So this is something that we physically, as human beings, cannot do. We don't have the time in our lives to sift through and correlate this kind of data, but this is actually saving lives in the long run. I just got back from the World Summit AI in Amsterdam and learned about some of the ways it's also being used for good. For instance, being able to track cell phone data of refugees so that we know that we can send the United Nations to help them and provide facilities for them. Also, we're able to predict things like earthquakes and national disasters. In our day-to-day life, though, how do algorithms and AI really affect us? The most kind of obvious way is through social media and this kind of predictive analytics. So if you've ever reached for your phone to check an email and 20 minutes later, after scrolling through Instagram, forget why you reached for your phone in the first place, now you understand how powerful these algorithms potentially are. Or if you've gone onto YouTube, watched a video, and an hour later have gone down a complete rabbit hole. So this is the first sign that we can see of how algorithms and AI can start to be a threat to our own authority and start to manipulate us. And it's never been more important for us as humans to exert our own authority and to be conscious clickers, to be sure that what we are clicking on, where we're looking, the attention that we're giving is something that we want to be able to train these machines in, because an algorithm is always watching. Data is at the heart of this. So algorithms learn from our data, and the data pool provided becomes that much more important because we've seen what happens when you have a limited data set. The outcomes become biased, they become discriminatory. So it is essential that we all start to participate. Might be a fun fact, each person, their monthly, the value of their data every month is roughly $35. So that's $420 a year per person. So this is quite big business. So where you click, where you put your attention, it really does matter. And this also brings up concerns about privacy and data privacy. But one thing that we have learned from the coronavirus pandemic is that this really instigated grassroots programs, local programs and institutions to work with government institutions, to work with international institutions. And it's the sharing of the data that helped us to get to a vaccination when we did, to be able to come back to events like this. And we found that this made algorithms able to help everyone. So it's this inclusivity, and this is this idea that we individually can actually input and provoke a difference and influence and impact this data. You've probably seen in the news, the Wall Street Journal recently released the Facebook files. So there were some really big things that came out of this. One is that the algorithms recognize that they are actually making people feel bad about themselves. So this is accelerating mental health issues like anxiety and depression and even suicide, especially among teenage girls and teenage boys. But the algorithms continue to persist, and this is something that Facebook has allowed. Number two, there's about 5 million users, celebrity VIP users, who go above moderation regulation. So nobody is monitoring what they are saying. They actually encourage them to be so outright and say outrageous things because that breeds engagement. Which brings me to the third point, which is that the algorithms are actually taking the divisive content, the stuff that's the most controversial, and pushing it right to the top of our feeds. So this misinformation, disinformation, hate speech that we're seeing, and it's dividing people and getting us to argue, to the algorithm's just doing its job. It's saying, look, I've gotten people to participate, I've gotten people to stay on, I've gotten people to engage. But actually the outcome for this as a society is having a repercussion that is maybe not the kind of future that we want. But I encourage you to think that if we have algorithms strong enough that can make us hate ourselves and hate each other, these algorithms are also powerful enough to make us love ourselves and to love each other and to bring people together instead of divide us. Going into XR and the metaverse, this is one of the areas I specialize in. So XR, virtual augmented mixed reality, and the metaverse is the future of the internet, Web 3.0. So this is an embodied internet. This is a virtual 3D 360 space where you can move between worlds easily. A couple things. So our internet that we have today was largely created by technologists and academics with governmental oversight to be able to share information across geographic locations. While the metaverse is very much being created by big tech companies with commerce and making money right at its core. So here we also have the opportunity to really stop and think about what we want the future of the internet to be. A couple things that are going to really be necessary for the metaverse to succeed. So it can't be owned by any one company, much like the internet is today. And also it must be interoperable. So being able to move from one world into the other while retaining your avatars, retaining your digital assets like NFTs, as well as your cryptocurrency. We know that VR can be very powerful and it can be used for good. This is a project that I had the privilege of working on. This was around social care and foster care, being able to train adults who are dealing with children who have been through neglect and abuse to understand and stand inside their shoes to be able to offer care better. And 95% of the people who participated in this said that it has had a direct influence on how they deal with these children in the future. But we also know that because it's so powerful, it has the ability to actually rewire our brains. So gaming transfer phenomenon is when we see and hear things from our games inside our real life, and this is a kind of a psychosis. So some of my friends who develop inside virtual reality will say that once they leave work, their instinct is to walk into traffic, because in VR you can walk into traffic and nothing happens. Also must consider the dark web coming into these 3D 360 spaces. So if you have an AI avatar that's not a real person, but inside this virtual world, and people are abusing this AI avatar, is that a crime? Is that something that we need to punish in the same way we might in reality? If people are getting away with things within these virtual worlds, are they going to be more likely to think that they can get away with them in the real world? And deeper fakes. So we're already seeing this coming into corporate blackmail and things like that. So being able to take the video image as well as the voice and in real time mimic this. So employees are getting calls on their phone, a video call from their boss that's saying, there's an emergency, I really need you to transfer that money into this account right now. And it looks like them, and it sounds like them, and they have the same mannerisms, and people are doing this. And obviously this is a scam. So what does that do to a society when we can no longer see or trust what we see on a digital screen? As well as when people don't have to take responsibility for their actions. You know, I know many politicians probably will in the future say, that wasn't me, I didn't say that, that was a deep fake. AR glasses are very much in the works. All the major tech companies are developing these glasses. I personally think that XR is going to hit a tipping point in enterprise in about 2025. And with these glasses, they offer the experience that all of a sudden we can have a heads-up, hands-free experience, so we're not all walked around hunched over looking onto a screen all day, and that's a great thing. But it also means that we are giving these companies the opportunity to see through our eyes. So this means that they will be able to pick up on subconscious reactions. They'll know when we lied. They know when we commit a crime. They will also be present during some of our most intimate conversations. And what this leads to is emotional data, so the emotions of things. Being able to know what our emotional buttons are, and for machines to be able to press those buttons and manipulate us. So in the future, these advertisements that we're going to see are going to be able to reflect the people in our lives who maybe we trust, or maybe we love, or maybe we hate. So maybe we see something and it reminds us of our best friend, and all of a sudden we're having this experience because we already trust that. So what I think is that these kind of issues are going to become the human rights issues of the future. Do I own my identity? Do I have a right to own my appearance, my voice? Do I have a right to protect my children's image and their voices? What about my emotional data? Is there a way to protect myself so that these emotions analytics cannot then be used against us? And then also, what is my responsibility around my biodata as well as emotional data? So for businesses, this is something we can start to incorporate into ESG, environmental social governance. So being able to establish within your company a set of standards, a set of guidelines, a way to audit the data that we are using, the artificial intelligence, as well as the virtual worlds we are creating. Because while at one stage every company needed a website, and then all of a sudden everybody needed a Facebook page, very soon we're moving into everybody is going to need to have their own universe inside the metaverse. And we need to be able to measure how well we are doing in these areas. And so this also opens doors to third-party auditors and things like that. We cannot wait for regulation. Regulation, like I said, I was just at this conference. They are aware that this issue is happening, but it takes a long time to move through. So it's really up to us as individuals, as representatives, as citizens, to promote this and demand this within the companies that we work for. This is a great example of how the same technology we're talking about can actually be used to maybe solve some of these problems. So Diffbot proposes using artificial intelligence to be able to sift through all the information out there, all the disinformation and misinformation, and be able to provide one common repository for facts. So if you want to know the truth or the fact, we have a place to go. Statement consumerism, choice, and reward. We can influence the future of these technologies. We each have a responsibility to, and we can do this by being conscious clickers, where we put our attention, what we click on, what we like, what we subscribe to. And some of the things that you can just do just in your everyday life, clear your cookies. When you go to a website, you don't always have to hit accept all just to move into that site faster. Reject some of these cookies. Also, be aware of the email carbon footprint that you have. So the average person in a year of receiving and sending emails, that's equivalent to 200 miles of a gas vehicle as far as the carbon footprint goes. So unsubscribe if you're not reading those emails. Clear out your junk mail. But really what's most important about this is that we shed some light on this topic, that we talk about it, and that we educate our children, our colleagues, our family members, and our friends, and we're not afraid to talk about the risks. And while it is overwhelming, we do have some power. Because if you think about with AI, we are the parents of this technology right now. We have the opportunity to be the role model that trains this technology. But this technology is evolving and it is growing, and it will become a rebellious teenager, and then it will become an adult that is fully autonomous, runs on its own without us, doesn't need us anymore, and also can reproduce. And so we have the opportunity now to make sure that we are still instilling the values in these machines and in these technologies that we want for our better future. And as I mentioned before, if these technologies are powerful enough to rewire our brain, to make us hate ourselves or to divide us, they also equally have the power to bring us together, to promote things that we can all agree are important, like happiness, compassion, and love. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Not only inspirational, but also thought-provoking. Thank you very much, Amelia. Amelia Kallman, round of applause.